Well, it's really good to see you again, Rod. It's been a while, but I have a feeling I'm going to be seeing a lot more of you in the future. This is a lovely opportunity. Thank you for this.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure, Mike, and the feeling is more than mutual. Working with you back in the days of the Highland Summer Festival 10 years ago, that was an absolute treat.
Well, this period of time, it seems to be an extra special one for you with this new book that you've got out called Kinmount, and
Mhm.
we're gonna chat about that today. And I thought just to give the listeners and the viewers a sense of where we're going, would you like to give us just a short thumbnail sketch of what the book's about?
Sure. Uh, Essentially, the book is about a middle-aged theater director. He's a down-and-out director, and he's forced to take a job against his will, directing an amateur production of Romeo and Juliet in farm country in the town of Kinmount for a summer festival. And he gets there, and suddenly he's confronted by one obstacle after another, not the least of which is a very powerful producer who has quite a vengeful force against him. And it's about how he juggles all these obstacles and tries to overcome them, kind of like a Don Quixote in some ways, and to realize that the show must go on. On a more serious level, it's a study of artistic integrity versus censorship on that level. Yes.
Well, in the early pages of the book,
Mhm.
before the story begins, you have a page that sends apologies to the residents of Kinmount.
Yes,
maybe,
I do.
maybe you could tell us how you arrived at mounting this production in the village of Kinmount.
Okay. Well, I knew what I wanted to do was make a kind of a fish out of water story for Dave. And I wanted to put him in a rural community where he has to learn about them. So he's coming in, he needs a steep learning curve, and he's coming in with a lot of his own prejudices. But I wanted to play it for humor. And so when I came up with the idea of setting it in Kinmount, it is in no way, and I let the great people of Kinmount know this, it is in no way the Kinmount that we know that is so close to Halliburton and Minden and that fine community. It's essentially, it's kind of like, when we talk about like old vaudeville, how Cleveland is funny, but, Ohio isn't. It's a name. So I picked Kinmount because you've got a name where you've got a noun and a verb side by each. So the idea of a place where you go to mount your kin just kind of had that certain sound of like banjos playing and, in the background. So, and then that became the setting for it. And gradually over the writing of it, eventually it became the title.
That's just lovely,
So
just
that's
lovely.
right.
And what on earth uh, entered your creative mind to do a book about summer theater? What sparked that?
Well, it actually, Mike, it started on a more serious level. I'm going back in the early part of my career. I used to freelance everywhere. And there were a couple of incidents in my 30s when I was on the road in different communities where I would run into producers who wanted to make changes to the playwright and change it for their audience. Now, the playwright in Shakespeare's case was dead, so he couldn't say anything. Or it was an absent playwright, someone that obviously like a Neil Simon who wasn't there. And so there were two cases in my career where I was being pressured heavily to make these changes, and I knew I was the only one in the room that had the voice of the writer, and I knew fundamentally that this can't be done. So in my entire career, I've only quit two shows, and these were two shows that I did quit over artistic disagreements. And I knew when they were happening, and I said, someday this will be something that I want to write about or do, and I didn't know how. And then as I started transitioning into writing more, and I've had a lot more adventures, and I thought, this could be the basis, some of these incidents, to create something. And then I just mashed it all up and turned into this fictional story of this Romeo and Juliet happening in farm country.
Well, what a wonderful journey it is, and in this journey, we meet I don't even know how to describe them. This diverse cast of characters,
Hmm.
with
Mhm.
all different personalities. Uh, how difficult was it creating this cast for your book?
Well, I knew I wanted to create, essentially, I wanted to create a company of likable oddballs, right? Because in the sense, we're all oddballs, we're all misfits. And I think theater's that kind of place where misfits fit, whether you're doing it on whatever level you're doing it. So the characters in Kinmount were derived from my overactive imagination, and also so many people that I've met in my life, all mashed together and then put through kind of a meat grinder to come up with these fictional creations, right? But having the loose basis of truth on some individuals that I've encountered, but generally speaking, they're a composite. So no one can say, "Oh, that's that person per se." They're all a mashup, and that was part of the fun of it. And my writing, because I've worked in theater for so many years, it informs my writing practice, i.e., as a director, you're always looking at, well, here's a character and here's their journey and what do they want? And then now what gets in their way is obstacles and what do they do to overcome it? So the same rules of directing apply to writing. And because of theater, it's dialogue based. My writing is dialogue based. So I usually start with the characters speaking. So the dialogue gets going and the characters begin to find their grounding, and then they sort of unfold more and they get more layered. But that's how I find my way in. So, and I think it's, and I'll often speak aloud a line of dialogue to make sure it's ringing true, and that it lands, that it's funny, so I think that's how the characters shape, how I find them shaping.
One of the lovely aspects of your book is that it moves with pace. Like it's always in motion and in action, and the scenes are changing quite rapidly. Was it a difficult job mapping out the storyline?
I did that first, Mike. I did do a long outline each chapter before I actually started down writing the book, and I've got a very low threshold for boredom myself. So, and I think that comes from when I was directing, moving scenes and making stuff happen quickly to keep the audience engaged. And it's no different than keeping your reader engaged. So I really feel the need to keep a piece moving. And a lot of that is the rewrites, right? So much is the rewriting and the editing, get rid of any, fat or excess. So you just get to the point. And that's the work. But that's sort of, I use that barometer on myself. Am I still enjoying it? So.
You're a pretty busy guy. You're at Canadair College and Nipissing University. You've got a busy life. Were you able to write every day?
No. It's still because I'm still full time as the artistic director of the Acting for Stage and Screen program at Canada North Bay, and part time at Nipissing as an English professor. I write weekends. And then when I get my winter break or my summer break, I try to write 6 hours a day.
Wow.
So that's the discipline. And so I go over the winter months, I'm getting my weekends in and going. And then I really go at it when I hit spring, summer, when I'm on my break. And that's why it takes about 4 years to write a novel.
4 years in total.
From
wow.
The very beginning of outlining to maybe the 5th draft, because it's it's usually, for me, it's about a 5 draft process, and then I have an editor come on board around the 3rd draft who starts working back and forth with me on it.
One of the joys of the book Kinmount is that there's a lot of historical and Shakespearean notes as a part of the book, and I'm wondering, from your standpoint, what did you feel they were going to add to the storyline?
The key thing for me was that Dave Middleton needed to be a credible director, and he's the protagonist, and I needed a character that the audience was going to buy in and want to go on the ride with him, and so empathize as he's going through all the frustrations he goes through. And it was also important to me that Dave Middleton knows his craft, that he's good at what he does, so that he has a viable argument to make that's serious about artistic integrity and not censoring the work, right? So that his voice is worth listening to. So in doing that, it allowed me to then explore a lot of my own methodology of exploring Shakespeare and how I like to work from the first folio and original manuscripts, and allowed David Middleton to become kind of a bit of a mouthpiece for some of my viewpoints about theater, my viewpoints about art, how I think it's so crucial to the psychic well-being of a community, all forms of art, and how important it is. So it allowed me to then, and I think also, but it weights the book with a greater seriousness of purpose. So we've got the humor and the hijinks and the absurdities and all that happens, but the bedrock of the book is a far more sort of serious study of why do we engage in art, and possibly even looking at issues like mental illness. And we look at I don't want to give anything away, but a lot of those different aspects that we look at. But I choose to write with humor. To me, humor is the kind of exchange that we have each and every day, and it keeps us from jumping off buildings. It's how we get through the day. And I think you can tell a serious story with humor, and it can still be a serious story. But I think for me, using humor, it's a more interesting way to tackle serious issues and get a point across by making people laugh. And then at the same time, they're going, oh, well, yeah, well, look at that. Hopefully, anyhow, that's what I'm trying to achieve anyhow.
Well, as I think I told you at some point, on the first page, I had 3 good laughs. So I knew I was looking forward to the rest of the book. And I again, to add to that thought, the historical notes and the Shakespearean references, they really did add to the feeling and the understanding of the book and what Dave was going through. I personally found that really an important part of adding into the book. Now,
thanks,
as someone that played a rather important part in this book, I gather your wife, Marion, was a pretty solid soldier behind the creation of this book.
You know what? Yes, she's my first editor always, right? And Marion's great because she is a very, very strong critic. So I'll give something to her to read first, and Marion will respond with, "Well, it's not working for me. I can't tell you why, but I just know whatever here is not just like." And then I'll run away and go back to the workshop and tinker, and then later draft, and then she'll give me her yay or nay initially. But more importantly, I have a little writing studio in my backyard that I disappear into to write. So more importantly, is there incredible support of me taking on this new role that that role is the wrong word. This other aspect of my creativity and craft that's become so important to me. That her support and ongoing support, and she is a foundation that makes it all possible.
So she can take a little bit of joy in the success of the book.
Oh, very, very much so. She, when she would read it, she go, that's funny. That's really funny. Okay, great, good. Okay, good, right? Because there's funny and then there's funny. And writing, it's very vulnerable. It's like preparing a show in that way, right? You really feel you think it's landing, but you don't know until it's in the hands of an audience for the play or a reader with a book. So I must say I have been and humbled and moved and tickled relatively pink to have people respond to the book as positive as they have been thus far.
Well, someone else who thoroughly enjoyed the book, Terry Fallis, the 2-time winner of the Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor, really enjoyed the book as well. That must have felt awfully good to know that someone who also is very, very involved in the craft appreciated it so much.
Mike, it was incredibly validating as a writer, in exploring the craft. Terry is, a phenomenal humorist, and we all know this. He's also such a generous and kind and humane human being, and genuinely cares about other writers and people. And so when my publisher had reached out to him to see if he'd be willing to read, an advanced copy and get some feedback, he got back to me and he was like, I love this book. You've got a winner. and he made the offer to write a blurb for it that we could use for initial marketing purposes. And he's been a champion of it from the very beginning, since the late summer when we started getting ready to bring it out. So, I am, so grateful to Terry for his support and his belief in the book and his belief in me. And it means the world. Yeah.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Now, the book has been out for a short while. Are you getting any indication of how the public, how readers are receiving the book?
So far, and I have to say, I couldn't be happier with the reaction I'm getting from people. From people that post reviews on Goodreads, and it's because it's just now being sent out from Indigo, because the official launch is on the 17th of October, and then it's into stores, and people can of course order it from their own bookstore or online. But people are starting to post reviews, and there's nothing. Well, it's a wonderful feeling when readers get it, when they get what you're going after, and they get what you were trying to say here, and they get all of it. So it's been really, it's been a wonderful feeling.
Well, I've got to tell you, I found the book, the read, tremendously satisfying. It's a great story, a great cast of characters. It's got humor, mystery, bizarre happenings as the book goes along. And at the end of it, you just say, well, that was fun. And
doesn't it make you kind of want to move to Kinmount, I hope, a little bit? Well, let's, all go do a show with all those people in Kinmount again, right? Because I mean, and I don't think there'll be a sequel, but, that they kind of, that's the idea, because the characters take over when you're writing, right? And you kind of go, wow, I really enjoy this person. They take over. Because your fictional life as a writer becomes just as real as your actual life, right?
That's right.
It becomes just as real. It's it's an odd experience sometimes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I was intrigued to see that at the end of the book, Dave was on the cusp of having to decide if he was going to do another summer production.
I know. And yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of like that whole thing. And we had there's an expression in the Canadian arts where the idea was the Renaissance is right around the corner. And that came out of a 19th century outlook where this is the moment when everything's going to happen, and that happened so many times in the history of the arts in this country, just about to happen. And then World War I came and deflated it, or the Depression, or World War II. And so for Dave, the same idea, and right into the book, I don't want to give anything away, but, there he is again, right? You think, yes, this is the promised land, and back to whatever that is. And something on that note I wanted to say, which is we're talking about, right, wars and depression and things that had to stop the arts, and through history we had plagues and things. And I think one thing that an actor friend of mine who read the book was saying, with all the theaters being closed right now and how much we miss, live theater. I know that the Highland Summer Festival couldn't do their season this past season, and nowhere could. And everyone's missing it so bad, and how important it is that I like to think that maybe Kinmount now is a read. It's my love letter to the theater. And now it's a bit of a tattered love letter, and it's a bit of a comic love letter to the theater, but it is my love letter to the theater. And I think maybe it helps right now remind people why theater has endured, and how theater artists adapt, and how somehow we always triumph in the end, and we are scrappy survivors. So in many ways, the book celebrates that spirit of humanity, and no more so as we weather this pandemic right now.
We've done a good job during our chat of staying away from giving away anything in the book.
Yes.
And I think that's the right thing to do. But I'd like to suggest to people that if you'd like to know more about Rod, and you'd like to know a little more about Kinmount, because the official launch is coming up in another week or so. Mm-hmm. And your website, rodcarley.ca, is a dandy website.
Thanks, Mike.
It has lots about you, and it has lots about the other books that you've written as well. So we heartily recommend people to go to rodcarley.ca and put on your agenda to get your own copy of Kinmount, because
And
it's
Mike, when times permit, nothing I would like more that is to come down to Halliburton again. I got so many old friends from the summer festival days, and hopefully maybe do a live reading and signing and see see everybody. That'd be a lovely thing.
that would be delightful.
Yeah, it sure
Rod,
would.
it's been great to see you again. This has been
Oh,
a
you too,
lovely
Mike.
reunion. And I want to thank you for taking time today to chat with us about Kinmount. And I guess the best way to end this conversation is to say, break a leg.
Thank you. Or drop a period.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you, Mike. Means the world.